So veteran actor Dick Van Dyke, 97 years old, escaped serious injury in a solo car crash last week. But police submitted paperwork to the DMV, ratting the guy out, asking the agency to retest the 97-year-old's driving ability because of his advanced age. Okay, so on March 15th, police in Malibu responded to an accident. It was Dick Van Dyke's silver sedan had crashed into a gate. They found the actor behind the wheel of his Lexus. Van Dyke said that his car slid and he lost control before it slammed into the gate. Now, the roads had been wet.
So was that an accident or did that have to do with age?
Well, exactly. So law enforcement says obviously drugs and alcohol did not play a role in the crash, but they do want Dick Van Dyke to undergo a driving test. It could be, does he know how to drive in wet weather? Do you still have the skills to be able to control a car that's doing certain things? Did you park it the right way? You know how you have to park if you're on a hill? All of these things that you're tested on your driving test could come into play. I do think that if I was a police officer and there was somebody of an advanced age in front of me that had gotten into a solo vehicle accident, I would definitely probably do the same thing. I'd be like, that's, no harm, no foul. But if you can still drive, prove it. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't know how I feel about, okay, once you hit, let's just say 90.
It's kind of ageist. I
mean, is it? Or is it like our bodies and minds do certain things at a certain age?
So let's just say, in theory, that I think you might have something going for you there. I think you have some good points, but I'll take the opposite viewpoint.
Okay.
And I'll say this about Dick Van Dyke. How many other people had accidents where their cars hydroplaned and slid and hit something yesterday in massive rainstorm?
Right.
I mean, it was coming down in Southern California as well. So, I mean, he's driving in a major storm. How many drivers in their 20s, 30s, 40s were involved in accidents yesterday? So why do we immediately jump to, oh, he's 97, it must be that? My stepmother's, I'll just call him my great-grandfather.
Okay.
He was amazing. Lived in Pasadena and was sharp, quick, and with it until he broke his hip and then died very quickly. But until then, he was attending city meetings and city council meetings and volunteering on panels. He was an engineer that helped build highways in Southern California. He was driving all over the place back and forth to all these meetings, and he was fine. He was 92, 93 when these things were happening. So who's to say that someone is completely fine and dandy driving around in their 90s and someone else might not be? Does that mean that every 90-year-old needs the test, or is that ageist?
Is it ageist to make people take a test?
Well, I mean, everyone should have to take the test. If you're going to make
everybody
the 90s
would
people,
at a certain age, right?
Yeah.
So if you hit a certain age, you should be tested. And how often? I would say you can ask the medical community, how quickly do certain bodily functions erode because of age, eyesight, reflexes, things like that. And we can base it on that. So if it's like, every 2 years, you need to go in and not just take the written test, but take the behind the wheel test. I don't see a problem with that. And if you have a problem with it, if you're of that age or near it, I think something else is going on. You're worried. You're worried you can't pass. I'll tell you the truth. Whenever they make me take the written test, sometimes you have to go take the written test. It's been a long time. I get a little nervous. I go, uh-oh. Do I have some bad habits I need to unlearn for this written test or what have you? But if they give me a driving test right now, hands down, I would ace that. Absolutely, I would ace that test.
Immortal Tiger says, Nikki, it should be based on one's ability to drive safely, not on a fixed age.
So then testing. So that's what I'm saying. So
not age-based, though. Just everybody, no matter your age.
Oh, no, I disagree. I think that's just going to overload our DMV. If we make everybody every 2 years, no matter your age, test, that's a bit much because I don't think we have the staff to do something like that. But I would say after the age of 80, every 2 years, you have to at least do the written and then maybe every other do the behind the wheel. I don't see a problem. I don't think that's ageist at all. I think that's, if you have the skill and ability to drive, what would the problem be in retaking the test? I mean, it's
Right.
just it's you have, and I'm not gonna. I might be a little stereotypical, but you got a lot of stuff to do today. I mean, maybe just add this to your very, very busy list of what you're doing when you're 80 years old, right? Like, I'm gonna make a trip to the DMV today. I'm sure some people can fit it in their schedules. So
Well,
go take a
I
test.
I think it becomes a family decision in a lot of cases where you've driven with grandpa and it's getting a little scary. Was a point where my grandfather stopped being able to see approaching stop signs. And so if he saw it at the last minute, it was a hell of a stop, or we would just coast on through. And that's when we had the family discussion.
Yes.
Not a good thing anymore, right? And so that was this moment. And I agree with Wes, who said my grandmother drove until 90. She had an accident and decided to stop driving on her own. I think that happens a lot where people know they get to the point where they're like, you know what? I've had some close calls lately. Maybe I need to stop. Or I'm having trouble seeing these stop signs. I'm having trouble,
It's
my hands
scary.
are a little shaky. I'm having trouble staying as a straight
Right.
line, whatever it may be. I think it often happens with a family discussion or with a self decision and not with a test.
Well, I might, so for instance, my mother, who is
Mhm.
10 years younger than my father,
Right.
basically no longer drives anymore. So she's had glaucoma, she's had eye surgeries, and she just doesn't trust her peripheral vision enough that, I mean, yes, she can drive herself. I mean, and she could see, but she's like, you know what? If I don't have to drive, she definitely doesn't drive at night. She no longer drives at night, but that's been a
Yeah.
while. But during the day, she's like, you know what? Your dad will just drive me, who is 10 years older than her. So just kind of to bring up, making that personal decision. But let me add this to the conversation. What if you, one, don't have enough family around you? What if, two, you have family that does not want to help you get to where you need
Mm.
to go? The support system that would be involved in taking somebody's keys or have them consider
Yeah.
giving up their keys is complicated.
It's really complicated, and people feel like they're losing their independence, and you
They
don't
are.
wanna
They
touch
are
off
losing their
some type of
independence.
depression from someone. Beth, who we adore,
Mm.
says, "As an old person, I think after 80, drivers should be tested behind the wheel every 2
Listen,
years."
I agree. What's the
And Liz
problem?
writes, "My neighbor is 96 and has gotten into his truck dinged quite often. My husband tells me he got into one yesterday because he saw that his bumper was damaged. He had to take a test last year and he passed." So,
If I saw a 96-year-old getting behind the wheel of a car, and if you want to call me ageist, fine. I'd be concerned. I'd be concerned because there's facts, there's science behind this. When you are older, your reflexes are slower. I don't care what the hell you say. You could still have good reflexes. I'm not saying you don't, but typically when you get old, no, it's not typically. When you get older, your reflexes slow down. They don't get faster.
mm,
You don't see better. You might see just the same, but
right.
these things happen. And so I don't think that there's anything wrong not taking away the keys, but testing more. I don't think that that's ageist.
Well, that's what Kim says. I agree with 80. With parents who are going to turn 80 this year, I noticed things with them, and I would want them to be tested every few years. And Wes makes a good point as well. Get
Eyesight.
retested,
Yeah.
get retested if you have a number of traffic issues. So, like if you're, of a
That's
certain
anybody
age
though. Yeah.
and you get yeah, or any age and you got a couple speeding tickets and maybe driving over the yellow line or weaving or whatever, that's could trigger an automatic, we got to test you and make sure you're all right.
SF Tesla says, I don't know the age, but annual tests and in-person driving is nearly every year. I don't remember the last time I took a test. Do you?
No, and as a matter of fact, my driver's license expires this year, and for the first time in what seems like a decade, I've been asked to come into the DMV for I would assume, what is a new picture, but I don't know, maybe they'll ask me some questions like, all right.
Well, they should tell you. They usually tell you on the notice if you
Yeah.
have to go back in. I lost my license, so I had to go in and get a new one, and I was kind of scared like you. I was like, "Oh, are they gonna make me do something?" But they didn't. They even used the same photo too, which was awesome. I was like, "Sure." Continue thinking that I look exactly like that. That works. Yeah, Katie says, I'm in my early 70s. I'm an active driver, and I agree with Nikki. I have no problem with age regulated testing. Look, it's a test. It's not pulling the keys from people because, in all honesty, I don't feel as a society we are ready to take on the responsibility of getting our older citizens where they need to go on a daily basis. I don't think that there's enough of a support structure. I
Yeah.
think that the sandwich generation is growing, where you have younger kids and older parents to take care of. And you're going to also put that on the sandwich generation to take care of. I don't think it's possible. So what's going to happen? Older adults that are capable of driving can't anymore because of the limit. And then what? Either they're isolated, they lie and continue to drive anyway. So if we just keep it on the up and up and be like, look, you can have your license. You just have to show us that your faculties are all good to go, and you got to keep the keys. Seems fine. Vilma says the driving test should be given to people over 75 every 4 years. Okay. I mean, the age that it starts, I guess we could debate a little bit. But if you're retired, just go in and get tested. I don't know. Take the time out of your very busy day and go. Make sure you can still drive. Heather says, what's worse, Peepaw being depressed because he can't drive anymore, or someone getting paralyzed or worse from Peepaw plowing into them on the road because we're too afraid to test him? Right. Exactly, Heather. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. Sorry, Peepaw. You need to prove that you can still drive that truck around. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. Yeah. And Chris writes in, you'll just be chauffeuring your grandparents if you take away their driving privileges.
Yeah, that's fine. Right.
Well, if you have time to do that, if you're nearby, what if you don't live anywhere near? What if you live an hour away even? They need to go to the grocery store. You're going to drive your ass down and take them to the grocery store all the time?
Yeah.
Not possible. Liz says, how do you take the key away from someone who lives by himself? I offered to drive him around when he needs to go somewhere, but he declined. Oh, because they, just like Kim mentioned, they don't want to lose their independence. You don't want to ask somebody. It's hard enough. I have Ubered from my house versus asking someone that lives, down the street. Well, this is my parents, but down the street to take me somewhere. I'm like, I'll take care of it myself. And there's a good excuse. Like, I lost my car. My car was in the shop. That's why I needed a ride. I Ubered. I don't know why I say Uber. I never take Uber. I lifted over there. And I think it's just human nature to not want to depend on anybody else, and you'll handle it yourself. Yeah. Let's see. Beth says, I took my driving test in 1968 and haven't had one since. Yeah, I haven't had a behind the wheel test since I got my driver's license. Right. But I think I would pass it. I kind of want to do an experiment. I'm like, can somebody just give me a driver's test to see how well I do? Remember, the best piece of advice, and if anybody has teenagers that are about to take their driving test, the best piece of advice I ever got, those classes that you take before you take your behind the wheel test, best piece of advice I ever got was you have to be obvious with your movements, as in looking in the mirror and looking, all those sorts of things. You can't they said, don't just look with your eyes, look with your head.
Because yeah.
Like, you have to I am looking in my mirror. I am checking this mirror. I am, all of those sorts of things. And I aced my driving test. And I still think about that tip and trick every single time. So
did you pass the first time?
Oh yeah. Aced it.
I did not. I took the driving test in Capitola.
Okay.
And I got the mean guy, first of all.
Of course he was mean, but
right around the DMV in Capitola were these street dips instead of stop signs. They're dips in the road. I went flying over these things. They were not in my neighborhood. I'd never seen a dip before. I didn't know what that meant. Well,
did you just go straight into them or what?
Well, yeah. It's almost the sensation of when you don't realize a speed bump is there and you just hit it at full speed.
Are you not looking? I think somebody needs an eye test over here.
I think I was 17 at the time. I go over these bumps and it's like a thunk. And the guy's like, go back to the DMV. I mean, this might have been a block away from the DMV. It was like, the test lasted all 3 minutes.
Oh, that is so funny.
Gotta go back to the DMV. I'm like, what happened? What was that? And he's like, well, that's a street dip, and it's actually to be treated like a stop sign. Apparently,
I didn't know that.
The guy told me that it was a what now?
You're supposed to stop completely or just slow down?
He said, my 17-year-old self, if I'm remembering back, he told me they are to be treated as a stop sign. You're supposed to stop at the dip and then proceed down. Now, I thought nowadays, I just go very slowly over the dip, right? Yeah. It's a way to slow you down as you approach an intersection. Okay, great. I deserve not to pass because not only did I not stop, I did not slow down for the said
So,
dip.
I can totally see
And
Kim
then
doing
there
that.
was one that we go to the intersection, and then there's another one. He's like, "Yeah, you're back to the DMV." The next time I passed with flying colors, but the first time out of the gate, the dips got me.
Oh, how funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Another tip, which they also said, is you should practice around the DMV because they're
Yeah.
obviously going to test you around the DMV. So
Yeah.
maybe, Kim, if you
That
would
would
have
have been
done
a
that,
that would have been a wise
you at
move.
least you would have known. I still think you would have failed because I would have never thought that you had to stop and then go in.
Right.
I would have slowed down enough, but I wouldn't. I will tell you this. I am the biggest, I'm so guilty of the California stop. I am the queen of the California stop. It takes a lot for me to come to a full and complete stop. Let me just say that. There's nobody coming or anything like that, but that California roll would get me. Definitely. And that's probably what I would do with the dip. I'd like slow down enough and then just kind of roll into it. So yeah, Kim says those are street dips in Petaluma. I just slow in the dip. I don't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're
I
supposed to
think
stop and then proceed slowly and cautiously. This is
look
not
at
what happened to me.
look what Chris wrote in. I drove to the DMV test at 16 by myself. They told me I couldn't do that. No,
Oh,
no, no,
no.
no, no. Did you they what did you take the test, Chris? I mean, how did they find out? I would have just I guess they would know
No,
when you got
I couldn't
out.
you can't do that. You can't break the law and then take the test, right?
Yeah, but like, did they know? Like, or did you just disclose that to them? I bet they saw you maybe getting out of the car, walk up and be like, I need to take my driver's license test. Oh, Tim, sorry. The last California stop cost me $300. That was my very first ticket. My very first ticket I ever got. I still have in my memory box that I went through when I was moving. My very first ticket, California stop. I was with my friends and he pulled me over and I was so bummed. He's like, do you know why I pulled you over? I love when they ask you that. And I go,
I go,
no, you didn't stop at that stop sign. I go, oh, I didn't.
oh,
I stopped
I
enough.
didn't.
I
That's
didn't.
confusing.
I could go.
I got 3 speeding tickets within a period of like 2 months. When I
Okay.
first got my driver's license, there was this, there still is, this road in Capitola, in between Capitola and Soquel,
Okay.
where it's like the stand of eucalyptus trees and then the ocean, but it's like a dip, like a roller coaster dip.
Okay.
And the faster you go down it, the more you feel it in your stomach like a roller coaster. I used to fly over that dip. And cops knew people would do that. So they hung out in the grove of trees and they would come
Yep.
and get you. I got 3 tickets and a note saying my
Three? It
life
took you 3 times to stop
3
doing
tickets.
that?
3 tickets. Yeah.
You're a terrible driver.
Well, I think 2 on that road and 1 on the way to high school, speeding down SoCal Drive.
Look at you, Batty.
So my dad said, clearly, you don't understand the financial impact and implication and financial impact of speeding
Ooh,
tickets, or of having a vehicle. So we're going to go ahead and take your 1968 Ford Mustang away. That
done.
was another problem. I had
Obviously,
this
you
big
can't.
hot rod. So he said, we're going to take this car away from you because you don't understand the financial impact of
Right.
having a car
Exactly.
because you're not the one paying the bills.
Right.
So until you understand the financial impact, we're taking your car away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got
I
3 right out of the gate, speeding tickets back to back.
Oh, I would have
Yeah.
done the exact same thing. Obviously, you don't know how to drive properly. So we're just going to take your keys away. I can already see myself having this conversation with my kids. Although nowadays, kids aren't like at the DMV on their 16th birthday like we were. 16th birthday. That
Yeah.
was what I was doing on my birthday, was getting my driver's license.
I don't
Kids
think kids care. Most kids don't care as much right now.
no, they
I
can they
think
can be
that,
together in different ways, you know?
yeah, and so they're not like on their 16th birthday at the DMV itching to get their license. They're waiting a little bit. They're like, I'll do it when it feels right.
Yeah,
You
that
know?
I don't know. I kind of feel like that was the fun part of turning 16, right? A
Right.
Walnut Creek adult softball says, I got 2 tickets in 3 days. Same cop, same place. I was late for work even later after the stop. Yeah. Sometimes I think about
Oh
that. Like, what
no.
excuse could I give? One time, the last time I was pulled over for a cop, I know when it was because it was my birthday. And he pulled me over, and the kids were in the back of my car. They were young. This was a while ago. And what I had done, I don't know how many of you do this, but like when you're stuck in a very long red light and you've just gone through so many cycles, I always say the same thing, and it's terrible. I shouldn't say it. I always go, you go, I go, you go, I go, to the car in front of me. Like, if you go, I'm going. If you go, I'm going. And so the car in front of me went, and that car ran the red light. I followed it. And so the cop pulled me over, obviously, and let the other guy go. And he's like, why did you do it? Like, he was so flabbergasted. He's like, why did you do that? I was like, I'm so sorry. Da, 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 da. And he gets my license, and the kid, and I told the kids as he's pulling me over, I'm like, Mom's getting pulled over. I did something wrong, driving wise. Don't worry about it. We're going to be, very respectful. Walking them through, because they've never been in the car. I don't think ever since either, with the cop coming up to us. And so he pulls me over, and he asks for my license. And I go, it is my birthday. Totally worked. He totally let me off. He's like, as a birthday gift. He's like, da-da-da. He gave me the riot act. He read me the riot act. But yeah, he totally let me off for my birthday. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but
no, that's good. Anytime you can get out of a ticket, I say excellent.
Yeah, hell yeah.
I got out of a ticket in Petaluma once. It was my husband driving. And it was one of these things where I was supposed to tell him when to turn, but I told him to turn too late. And so it was kind of a haphazard, weird turn. So we get pulled over. And it was a turn down a street you weren't supposed to turn down.
Hell, you're just leading him down to hell. You're like, sorry.
We're like, turn in here to the library. No, you can't go that way in the library.
Bad pilot. Okay, co-pilot, you're fine. Okay.
So we see the lights and sirens behind, kids in the back seat, family of 4 in the car.
Oh, geez.
Cop walks up to the window, and I look over at him and I go, "Oh, you're so-and-so's husband." Because it's Petaluma and everybody knows each other. So
I would not like
always know
all.
who's. So he looks at me and he's like, how do I give my wife's sister's friend a ticket? And so he's like, well, I'll let you off with the
very easily. You write it out and be like,
be a little more careful. I'm like, oh, thank God for a small town. Yeah.
Yeah, no. I was one
all
time
about who you know.
I was pulled over once in Sacramento when I was a reporter in the news truck by the CHP. And what happens, if anybody knows Sacramento, there's 80 and there's business 80. Okay. And it kind of cuts through a little bit. If you know Sacramento, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The speed limit changes during this one little section. And I know we're late for headlines. We'll get to them.
It's almost like a speed trap. Like they do that on purpose.
Well, I mean, I'm terrible. Whatever. I was wrong. Okay. The worst part of this whole story is, so the CHP pulls me over. Embarrassing as hell, because I'm in the wrapped news vehicle on the side of the freeway getting pulled over. Then to add insult to injury, he's like, you were speeding. And I was like, I was. And he's like, what do you think the speed limit is right here? And I was so I was so off. I was so off of what the speed limit actually was. And he's like, reduce it by 10 miles per hour. And I was like, oh no. And that's the only time my name, he knew I was with KFBK. He knew I was Nikki Maduro. And he was like, now this is what he did. I'm not even kidding. He's like, you raise your right hand. Say, I promise I will never da da da. And I was like, sure, no problem. I do not want to go back to the newsroom and tell them that I just got a ticket in the news vehicle. I didn't know how that would work. Like,
no, they take away your news privileges. Yeah, you don't want that. No way, man. Thank God he knew your name.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really obvious since I was in the wrapped vehicle and the station isn't that big. But yeah, it was quite embarrassing, if I do say so myself.